Hello and welcome to another webinar from M.A.C Solutions on the subject of the Kepware software. Today's webinar is on the subject of the support and maintenance programs that you can use with the Kepserver software. As with many industrial softwares, it's important to keep the software licenses under a support and maintenance program to get the most out of the software. And we find that most people who are using the Kepware software do indeed keep the software licenses under a yearly support program. Consequently, we do get asked quite a few questions about the support and maintenance program. And so the purpose of this webinar is to answer all those questions in one go. So here's a brief look at the agenda we'll be covering today. So a little bit about the support and maintenance program, what's included within it, and what benefits you get from being within the program. A section about support term synchronization, which is the synchronization of the dates of the support across multiple licenses. And then we cover the types of terms that you can sign up for. It's not just 1 year, you can have multiple years, and also the costs that go with that. And then a little bit towards the end, which summarize what you get with and without being in support. So in terms of the audience for this webinar today, it's those engineers who are designing, specifying, or maintaining automation systems where Kepserver is used. And secondly, managers who are responsible for systems that employ the Kepserver software and who they can call upon if they have any issues with the software itself or with the systems that might be employing it, how they get technical support and how they would handle things of that nature should they have any issues. And also people who are looking after the more strategic angles of the production process, perhaps how the processes all run together, perhaps disaster recovery, people who are looking after the due diligence of the whole system and need to understand how all these things work. First of all, what's included in the support and maintenance program? What do you get if you are signed up to support and maintenance for the Kepware licenses? First of all, Kepware typically have 3 releases of the Kepserver software each year, and each of those releases will have upgrades and enhancements across the drivers, the plugins, and the interfaces, and the server core itself. There will be security enhancements within that, as well as new attack vectors are known. The Kepserver guys will engineer in solutions to overcome those. There will also be new versions of Windows coming out, and so the Kepware engineers will need to make sure that the Kepserver software will be compatible with those. And of course, there will be new PLC versions coming through. There will be new firmware releases for those PLCs. And so it's important that the drivers inside the Kepserver software are compatible with those new versions of hardware or new versions of firmware. And then, of course, there will be improvements and patches and fixes. So that typically happens 3 times a year. On top of that, you will then get multi-level tech support. In the UK, there's us at M.A.C Solutions. We're the technical resellers for Kepserver in the UK, and we have been for over 20 years. And we'll provide the first level phone-based, internet-based, and remote support for all our customers in the UK. Behind us, there is a small team of technical engineers from Kepware working in Europe. And then, of course, you have the technical support team in America where the software is written. And then behind them, you have the R&D teams who are the actual software writers themselves. So there are 4 levels of tech support at your disposal for those people under the support agreement. The third thing, which is the other pillar why people will like to keep their software in support, is the ability to recover lost or broken licenses. So should an instance occur where a particular PC that's running a Kepware license is damaged or suddenly falls over, the server room is flooded, or a VM gets corrupted or something of that nature, then obviously the license will be lost. And if you're within a support and maintenance program, you are entitled to a license recovery. So that's the third thing that's important within the support and maintenance program. What benefits do you get from being in the program? First of all, it's operational benefits, a rapid resolution of any technical issues you may have to keep your plant running. So that's technical support, expert advice, troubleshooting from our technical team, and as I mentioned just now, the disaster recovery of licenses and also license transfers between PCs. All of that is hopefully going to keep your production running smoothly and with maximum of equipment availability. And being in support obviously allows you to upgrade the Kepware versions. And so as the PLCs may change, the firmware in those PLCs may change, the operating systems, the Windows operating systems you're using on those servers may get upgraded. Then by keeping the Kepware within support, you can seamlessly move through those changes without having to re-engineer anything. So that's the first benefit, which is operational benefit. The second benefit is the security benefit. Hackers and malicious actors are continually trying to find new ways to get into systems, and industrial systems are on their target for sure. And so as new threats are found, then new security patches can be put within the software. So to keep yourself at the head of combating these latest cyber threats, it's important to keep the security within the software as up to date as possible. The third thing is, if you are looking after all the Kep server licenses across all the installations, by keeping all of the licenses within a support and maintenance program, you can have a common solution, a common version used across all your assets. You know that all the assets are supported in terms of tech support should you need it, and you know that you have peace of mind if you have some sort of disaster, you can transfer the licenses, you can recover the licenses. And the fourth main benefit is the cost. If you look at the time that would typically take to recover a system that's out of support, compared with the typical time to recover a system that's within support, the lost production during that time would be enormous compared with the very modest cost of keeping the Kepware software within a support and maintenance program. Typically, for instance, a whole year support for a Kepware, like a common Kepware license like the Rockwell suite or the Siemens suite or the Omron suite, would be only a couple of £100 a year, which is nothing at all in terms of production costs. So let's now talk a little bit about term synchronization. For those of you who are familiar with the way that the Kepware software is licensed and supported, each time you purchase a Kepware license, you will get 1 year's support and maintenance with it. That's mandatory when you purchase a new license. And the support date will start on the date that the license is purchased and end a year later. That means that if you purchase multiple licenses at different times, then you end up with licenses which start and end at different times through the year. Now that can be quite messy in terms of raising small orders for small licenses at various times in the year, so it makes sense to synchronize them. So it's very common for us to work with end users who have a large number of Kepware licenses and ask them, is there a particular date that would make sense for you to have as your synchronization date? Would you like the support for all your Kepware licenses to start on a particular date? We can then synchronize all the licenses across to that date. And then as new licenses are purchased, they can be also synchronized to that same date. That means that instead of raising lots of small orders through the year to cover individual licenses, you only have a single order to raise to cover all the licenses. And it means that it's easier to manage by a single person, and it's just logistically and in terms of the administrative burden, just a lower burden. So it's just a better thing to do all around. So how does this work in practice with regards to the perpetual licenses? Now, perpetual licenses are licenses which you purchase outright. And as I mentioned before, when you purchase it, you get the first year's support with it. That's 20% of the software cost. So that's mandatory for the first year. Subsequent to that, to renew that, that's another 20%. So that's 20% of the software license list price. Now, if you have licenses which are out of support, if they are out of support and been out of support for less than 1 year, then those can also be renewed. And again, it costs 20% of the license as you would for a fresh renewal. The renewal date, however, is backdated to the day after the previous support elapsed. So if you have a license that's 6 months out of date in terms of its support, when you place an order for a renewal for that, you'll get 6 months backdated and 6 months in the future. If you have licenses which have fallen out of support for more than 1 year, then it's not possible to renew those. So it's necessary to do what's called a support recapture. A support recapture puts the license into support for a year from now going forward. And after the end of that year, it would cost 20%. To get the software into the recapture in the first place, it costs you 50% of the original software license. So that's a very good way of getting a license which is perhaps using an old version, several years old, bring it up to date to the very latest version without having to buy the software afresh. You can buy a software recapture and perhaps get an old version that's maybe several years old and bring it up to date to the very latest version for only half the price. As I mentioned, the support start date starts on the date of the purchase order for the recapture and ends a year later. Now, I've been talking about terms ending a year later, but it's not actually necessary to only use 1 year for support. If you want, you can go for more than 1 year at a time, and that's very common. If you can purchase between 2 and 5 years and on an initial purchase of the software, but also for renewals and also for recaptures. The reason you do that is that if you have a yearly support, you would need to raise a yearly order. And as I mentioned before, the support costs are not high, typically only a couple of £100 for a typical Kepware software. So if you're raising one of those every year, it's not logistically a very efficient thing to do. So it makes sense to say we're going to buy 5 years support up front, place one order now, and we're covered for a number of years. So that's fewer orders to raise, fewer administrative functions to do. You also know that you're not going to accidentally forget in years 2, 3, and 4. You've got peace of mind that the software is covered for a number of years. And as I mentioned, you can add licenses to the same term and synchronize them to the same common end date. So you could synchronize all your licenses to the same end date in a number of years' time. There's also cost benefits to having multi-term support as well. At the point at which you place the order for the multiple year, the price paid is the price at that time. So you're insulating yourself from yearly price increases that could occur during that period of time. And typically there's a couple of percent per year price increases. Over 5 years, that adds up to 10, 12%. As I mentioned before, there's no need to raise small purchase orders every year, so that takes away that administrative cost. And we also offer an incentive of multiple year discounts. And the most common one is the 5-year one. You get 20% discount for a 5-year term. So effectively you pay for 4 years of support, but you get 5 years. If you're using subscription licenses rather than perpetual licenses, how does it work with subscription licenses? Now, subscription licenses are different from perpetual. These are licenses you don't own and pay support on. These are licenses where you are paying for the use of the software. So there's no initial purchase cost. There's no initial capital cost. Instead, you pay for the use of the software, and the cost of that is 40% of the perpetual list price. So it's a different way of buying the software. It's a different, often works for different types of projects, especially IoT projects where you're paying subscription for the rest of the solution. A subscription of the Kep server software would also make a lot of sense for that sort of solution. Like with the perpetual licenses, it's not necessarily to only have 1 year. You can have up to 4 years terms for subscription licenses. There's no discount available for multiple years, but you are, as per the perpetual ones, you are insulating yourself from small price increases through those years, and you're also not having to raise yearly subscription licenses. So you're basically saving yourself administrative and price increase costs through the years. And as I mentioned before, just like with Perpetual, any new licenses that come in, you can synchronize to the same common end date. So all your licenses could end at a particular date in the future, and you can add new licenses into that subscription agreement between now and that end date. Plus, there are several unique options with subscription licenses, such as the enterprise subscription option. Now, an enterprise subscription license is different from a standard license in that it is an all-you-can-eat software license, whereby all of the drivers, all of the plugins, all of the features of the Kep server software are made available or licensed, and you can use the subscription enterprise licenses a number of times. So you can install it X number of times depending upon the number of seats you purchase. This is ideal for a factory-wide or enterprise-wide deployment of Kep server. There's just one license number to manage. And as I mentioned, all the drivers, all the plugins, and all the interfaces are activated fully. So if that sounds like the sort of thing that will be of use to you, and we are certainly seeing a lot of large end users using this approach now to simplify things, then please contact us for more details and we can talk about that. So to summarize, the first column here shows the licenses which are not under support. The second column here shows licenses which are under support, and the third column shows licenses which are synchronized under support. So you'll see with licenses not under support, you don't get tech support from us, you don't get tech support from Kepware, you don't get any of the upgrades as the 3 versions are released each year. You won't get any of the latest security patches in those upgrades or plugin improvements, and you don't have the ability to recover any licenses that might be lost due to situations under outside your control. The latest version of Kep server, as I mentioned earlier, will be compatible with new Windows releases. If you're not within support, you won't be able to upgrade to the latest version to get those compatibilities. And you also won't get the compatibilities with new PLC firmwares and models. So you can see there are distinct advantages to staying within support and maintenance, and there are distinct advantages further to synchronizing your support to multiple years, whereby you just need to place one single order every few years to keep all of your licenses under support all in one go. So I hope this webinar was useful and beneficial. My name is Dave Hammond. I'm the product manager for the Kepware software in the UK. We are #1 for OPC software in the UK, and we've been the Kepware resellers in the UK for over 20 years. So we have a lot of experience and a lot of expertise in these things. So please contact us for more information or any applications you may have, or for further information on how we can provide you with support and maintenance for your licenses. Many thanks for attending this webinar. Thank you.